Hey everybody, how's it going? Michael Troy here. Welcome to week two of my weekly recap of the X-Men 97 cartoon with my co-star Philip J. Urso. So happy to have you back. I cannot wait to talk about this week's episode. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Been looking forward to this for days. Last week was so much fun. So
It
I'm so glad we're doing this.
it was so much fun, and I love your t-shirt. That is amazing.
Thank you. This is one
All
of
the
my
looks of
friends.
Storm.
Yep. Artist and friend of mine who is on Instagram and Facebook, Serge Towers. His store online, I think, is called XMen underscore fan underscore tees.
And to make it easier, I will put the link in the description of the video so you can get his t-shirts because he has a lot of like really cool t-shirts. And I think he draws them all himself.
Yep.
Yeah,
I have several, especially like a lot of the group ones over time, like, groups of five, X Factor, Excalibur, New Mutants, nine New Mutants, which of course you and I both love. X.
absolutely.
I have a Storm and Forge one I'm going to wear, I think, after the Life Death 2 episode.
I know we have to plan them. Like as I showed you before we went live, I am wearing like my Spider-Man t-shirt. See, it's because it's too big. I needed like a smaller one, but you take what you can get when you go to Target, right? And it wasn't X-Men themed, but I do have an X-Men shirt lined up for the future. I just felt like this wasn't like the pinnacle episode, so I don't
No.
know if I want to just waste it on like such a mediocre episode. Um,
And if you saw in the comments on YouTube, my friend Chicago Superman, who I think on YouTube is AF bartender, Air Force bartender, was saying how I'm in the wrong room because my master bedroom has X-Men stuff, but I just have more space in this room. It's a little bit more comfortable. So that's why the Storm shirt is on, even though I'm surrounded by wonder. Um,
Well, I mean, you could literally like rehang three posters and just, do that
that's,
for
I
the.
was thinking, put up something behind, redress the set temporarily. I
I
did
know,
bring
right?
prep.
Oh, you brought props. Oh my God, that's awesome. I love that. That is so cool. Does she have pupils though? I take issue with that if she has pupils.
She has pupils when she doesn't use her powers if she was drawn correctly in the beginning. Remember, her eyes only went into that pupilless state when she activated her powers. Then that changed later to she had no what do you call it? Like I think
Uh,
in the 80s, she had no pupils depending on who drew her, even when she was powerless.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I definitely think Byrne drew her a lot with out pupils, even when she was not using her powers. But I'd like to argue that someone like Storm, who is so in tune with her powers, that's gorgeous. Is that a Bowen Designs bust?
It's a Bowen bust.
He does such beautiful work.
This one you'll go crazy for, and it's my last one for this podcast. But this
Oh, oh my God, that is amazing. That is so good. That is kind of one of the topics I wanted to talk about because I had such a good idea. But that is beautiful. Oh my God. Asgardian Storm is definitely, I mean, you know, major. So I believe with this week, I definitely cursed us by saying last week that I had no love for Jubilee and that I really felt like she wasn't in the spotlight. So now this episode, we are treated to her 18th birthday and she's
Where'd
celebrating
that
it.
come from?
Where did that come from, first of all? She's celebrating it with Sunspot, her new best friend, which I'm totally fine with that because if we have to put up with Jubilee, please give us Sunspot at the same time. I went from full on being like mediocre about her to just like really not caring about her. And I feel like youth was like the really only thing she had on her side. She's put in the show to be like the relatable young teen. So she should be like 14 tops in my mind. And now they full on make her 18. Like, what is that about?
Remember in the comics, it took like 20 years to make Kitty Pryde go from 13 to 16.
Amen. Like, what do they want to make her like voting age or something? Like, please tell
I
me that's not the angle here.
I have a theory, and I hope nobody thinks this is just me being, rude or anything. I think she was made legal so they could take storylines to the next level on an animated show with her. Not like
I
it,
agree.
but just so there's like, if they want to, even in like some subtle little, innuendos, They don't have to hear about, I can't believe they're promoting, underage stuff on an animated cartoon on Disney Plus.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, like it kind of like if they're gonna be making out and stuff, it kind of does make me uneasy. I don't know, like
But
just
she was like 13 in season 1, and in season 4 they celebrate their first Christmas together. They say it's her first Christmas as an X-Man. So time was going by, definitely slower on the original series. 3 years for us, 1 year, less than 1 year for her. So she was maybe 15 by the time the original series ended, which would make her no more than 16 now. But it's the world of comics and animation. And I'm sure they just decided, because they just jump started her, because none of the New Mutants turned 18 for forever, except Karma, who was 19 at the beginning.
yeah, but I was gonna say I feel like she started out that way. Like she was always like the oldest New Mutant.
Well, she
and
was
they
legal
established that.
guardian to her brother and sister. She had to be over 18.
Like I think Danny was like 15. I think
She
Rain
was.
was the youngest at 13.
They go back and forth with Rain and Roberto's ages. He was
Berto
13.
was 14. Oh no,
He
she's
was 13.
vice versa.
She was
Okay.
14. Then they said later she was young. I mean, if you go back and reread, they're both like 14 and 13 flip-flopping back and forth. But then they clearly establish she's the youngest because they wanted her to be the wide-eyed innocent that she was. And Roberto was kind of a player for a 13 or 14-year-old boy. I was like, that boy is really getting lucky at his
I was gonna say, like, in the era we grew up in, I like, how else do I put it? But like teenagers were screwing all the time in like our comics and our movies and our on television, I guess. You know what I mean? Like a very special Facts of Life where Natalie lost her virginity, for God's sakes. I mean,
yeah, when she was in her 20s.
Oh well. Oh true.
But she was 21 actually. They actually carbon dated her age in that episode. Beverly Ann makes a reference about it. But yeah, like with Rain and Roberto, she was actually had a crush on him in the very first issue of New Mutants. And then like 8 or 9 issues later, when Sunspot and Cannonball are fighting in Nova Roma because they're like drugged and they're hating on each other because they're under the influence, she says, "Kill him, my love, kill him." And I'm like, who the heck is she talking to? I was like, I thought it was Roberto. And then you see Roberto regain the use of his Sunspot powers in the middle of the battle, and he's strangling Sam. And she's like, no, not him. And then I'm like, oh, wait, Sam's the one she has the crush on? So they kind of flipped that, like just in the first year of the series, because in the very first episode, I keep doing this issue. Now I'm doing the opposite of what I did last week. Roberto kissed her hand when Stevie is doing Karma's hair, and he says how Rain's hair is so fiery and it's like her spirit or blah 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 blah. I can't remember. And he kisses her hand and she's blushing and she thinks he likes her. And
yeah, but he's just a player.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You think that at that point he's the one she has the crush on. She has exhibited no interest in Sam until he's getting strangled in a gladiatorial combat.
So,
like Thursday in Mutant World.
I have to say, like, I don't know if this is because I was like never huge into video games or whatever. I liked the fact that they're like leaning hard into the 90s thing, and like Nintendo was big in the 90s and video games were big in the 90s. So I think that was probably fun for a lot of people, and I could enjoy it to a certain extent. I thought they should have come up with a more original name that sounded more like Mojo World and less like Motendo or whatever the heck they called it. That was a little.
That could take on so many different. Which I really don't have a problem with. I don't know.
And we'll just leave it at that. But
I'm just leaving it at that. But I will say one thing I like what they're doing. The animation for her powers is solid in this series. They are doing a great job showcasing her powers. They're very visually stunning. They didn't do as much of that in the original series. She didn't really use her powers as much as she could have in the original series because she was always supposed to be the young one that wasn't supposed to go into battle. They were always protective of her. I mean, you see her, the most she uses her powers are, like I think in a long shot episode or when they go up against the Juggernaut, but she didn't really, she wasn't a field operative.
Right. Well, so what else happened? Like, between them? Like, I don't know. Oh my God, yes. Okay, so what were your first reactions to seeing Mojo?
Oh, anorexic Mojo at first, who got healthy again later. I don't, we've probably discussed it. I don't remember because we share a lot of data. But I have never been a Mojo fan. I just don't care for the character. Of all of the Mojo-verse characters in general, not a long shot fan. Don't really care. I like Spiral. I think she's awesome. But she has 6 arms. How is that not awesome?
It is so awesome. And I love that not only does she have 6 arms, but then like at least one and 1.5 are like bionic. So like she lost one in battle, and that is like makes her even more of a badass than she already is. But I am a fan of Longshot, even though it's like it is hard to get into because it's a little bizarre. But the Art Adams art, of course, drew me in, and made me completely obsessed with it. But I do like Mojo. But I thought, oh my God, like Mojo's on Ozempic when he first popped out. And then, but I like that they alluded to the fact that she's like, you lost weight. And he was like, oh, you noticed. But then once he started I don't know, feeding off the game or how does he work off of ratings or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. So then it replenished him, we'll say. But yeah, that was like crazy. If you're gonna do Mojo, I don't even know that was like the best depiction. Like that wasn't I don't know. It felt, did it not feel like filler or like what do they call it?
Yeah, filler's a good word. I don't know how else you would put it, but of interesting note, in case you didn't know, maybe you did, Allison Court, the original voice of Jubilee, was the voice of Abscissa, the older video version of her.
Oh, that's fun. I like that. That's a fun Easter egg for fans like you. Yeah, that was fun that they had the old video game or the old version of her. That was kind of fun to see that. I mean, I would be down for an old lady Jubilee. Which sounds like like a tea dance or something like that.
And then I'm wondering if you thought like I did that, when they kind of just switched from that portion of the episode into it was like 2 shorts. It was like Super Friends almost, where you had 2 completely not connected storylines in one episode that did not relate to one or the other whatsoever.
Well, my first thought was this the week that the showrunner got fired because something is not jiving here.
No, these were all in the can, months ago, year or if not a year, before the writer's strike was officially on or in the actor strike, just all those. But this was all, I think, pretty much sealed and dealed, before. But and I think they just wanted to, maybe just give us a teaser of Life Death before they go into it more actively. I mean, yeah, they covered a lot in 8 minutes. I timed it. We only got 8 minutes of Storm and Forge. Now, I was not about that. It was a good 8 minutes, but it was not as long as it could have been for me.
So I did like it. I felt like it was a little strange that they didn't take advantage more of his apartment, with the holodecks and the stuff like that. And they chose to make it look like, like a cabin in the woods. I mean, basically. And I just love the way it looked in the comic book where, she was walking on different platforms and he could turn them off and on and stuff. And it looked very modern. And I just think that, and what was that owl? What was that? I don't know what that owl thing was about.
But notice how they kind of did a little Easter egg to that apartment. Yeah. When you think she's falling off the mountain, but it looks like it's a hologram or a dream sequence, and she's back in the cabin and the roof seals up. And I'm like, oh, that's like a nod to when he lived in the holo penthouse,
Right. Yeah. So maybe we'll see more of that. I don't know. But I do, I was very happy to see it. And I think that so the sequel is coming up in a few episodes, and what that'll be like a full episode. I hope.
I
Like,
think it's because it's the only title for the episode. It's not like, Motendo / Life Death. It's just Life Death 2. So I'm hoping that it's the entire episode. But I'm wondering if there's like, a method to their logic here. Notice how Storm is still not in the opening credits?
that's so funny you should say that, because I skipped past the opening credits, and I shouldn't do that, because I just saw that they've been changing them. Didn't like Jean go from long hair to like a ponytail?
She went back to the ponytail because she's not Madeline anymore, which I think is another Easter egg that they're trying to tell people that she was Madeline in season 5 of the original show. That's when they changed animation studios completely, and nearly as good as the first 4 seasons. I mean, it flip-flopped a lot the first, but it was consistent. The last 6 episodes are completely different, lower quality, don't look as good. They got rid of the ponytail, so that's what, people are like. I wonder if they're trying to say that ponytail, real Jean, not ponytail, Madeline.
They were going to say ponytail, bad animation.
Yeah.
No
ponytail. I never understood the ponytail because she didn't have it in the comics. And how does it make it easier to animate? I mean, Storm and Rogue have long flowing hair. How does tying her hair back in that headdress thingy, tiara looking thing?
Well, yeah, whatever the hell that thing. I know. I don't like. She has a tiara that goes from her head down to her crotch, basically? Like, it's so weird. But is that not like, is that sort of like supposed to be like the Gambit thing happening? And is that why people think she has a ponytail? But I don't know. Did we ever get it treated to a back view of that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's the ponytail peeks out from the back. It's like solid in the back with a little hole for the ponytail. But again, it makes no sense when before it was just like it went up around here, covered, framed her face, but it was open in the back and her hair was free flowing.
Yeah, it doesn't seem very like practical. And I feel like we're running into that like Michael Keaton Batman Powell like problem where like you can't turn your head, basically.
Probably what Disco Nightwing had an issue with back in the 80s.
Could you imagine, like he went through a lot of Visine because he was always like poking his eye on the corner of his pointed collar.
I noticed something that you had brought up about Scott. It looks like they're doing that with other, like Forge has a lot of the shadowing in his face in the animation.
I know, isn't it weird?
So it looks like they're using a lot of shadow especially around the cheekbones on certain characters running around here,
But and it looks like a Rorschach test, 5 o'clock shadow, though. It's like they're bizarrely shaped.
But yeah, you got me noticing that, and I was like, it was really obvious with Forge. Did you see his little X Factor pics on his little mantle?
I did. I love those little Easter eggs. I know. I saw that for sure. That was like the Peter David X Factor, right?
Because he appears. Yeah. He has in an X Factor episode in season 3, the one with Iceman called Cold Comfort.
Peter David, isn't it? Oh no, Forge.
Forge.
I was like, wow,
and then
how meta.
On that beach shot of him, that model that looks like he's in Florida having a great time or whatever.
No. Yeah, if they really want a deep cut, we should get some stills from like the Marvel swimsuit illustrated issue.
Yeah, it totally looked like a nod to that. I was like, because I'm sure Rogue had a pose like that at some point in time.
I'm sure, where she's breaking her back or whatever.
Yes. Nobody has on that.
I hope now that we have these like little Easter eggs and stuff, I would like to see like a gas station attendant Rogue make an appearance. I would like to see, it's interesting because Rogue had, but I was thinking, okay, gas station attendant Rogue is the long, like the green with the long black sleeves and like just in the hair. I can just see it in my head, like it's painful to remember, but oh, speaking of Rogue, that is one of the things I wanted to talk about. I don't know that I'm so upset about the affair with her and Magneto as I am about Gambit being so hurt by it. I feel like he should be like, oh, well, screw you guys. And just like, he should be like a player and just like go get his own, I don't know. But he's always been like really in love with her, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, but he always flirted with, he He was jealous of Forge when Storm went back to adulthood. You know,
Oh,
it's like,
okay.
I'm sorry, you just hung out with her for the better part of like the summer when she was 12 years old. Then she's made into adulthood. She kisses Forge during Extinction Agenda because she was the catalyst to give them all their powers back. And he's like, don't know if I like this change, but I think Storm's next to be mine. I'm like, oh dear God, why? Why was that necessary?
And I think the answer's in the question with that one.
And that was, even though, during our favorite writers run, he had, danced with, ages, Kitty and
Yes.
Colossus having that age gap. This
Right.
was after. This was post.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, it was Claremont. No, sorry, that was his last big crossover before he left. Well, before the Mutant Genesis. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that, because Extinction Agenda he did write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, things were different then.
Yeah, people, were just a little bit less focused on, certain things. I mean, maybe that's a good thing, probably a bad thing, because, like I said, the things we've talked about in the DC verse that were like, well, why was that okay?
Yeah, I know. Like I said, for better or worse, things were different then.
Yep. You take the good, you take the bad.
So, what was up with the owl anyway in Life Death? I don't remember that in the original storyline.
I think that was an Easter egg for like Fall of the Mutants when they were, you saw bird versions of themselves or whatever, and it's, of course, it's linked to the adversary. But remember when he said like the owl can't, she said like the wind is keeping the owl there, I think she was talking about, because the wind always blows east, so the owl can't fly against it. I was like, there's just a lot going on here. It wasn't as easy to follow as last week's was. Even though they crammed in like 3 years of Madeline into one episode.
Yeah, how I know that's like, I feel like we were spoiled by the first 3 episodes because they really were like pretty perfect. I mean, like they were solidly entertaining, like riveting, like the story flowed and made sense. Yeah, this took a little more suspension of disbelief with all this that was happening in this episode. I mean, what else did we even get? Like, so basically, I don't know, I felt like he was such a stick in the mud about her birthday too. What did he say? He was like, no, screw your birthday. Right.
Yeah. And that's when I guess she says to her old, so Magneto was right in a sense,
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, making her 18, I'm like, oh, I can see where this is going. Yes, because So how old is Roberto?
Right.
I'm hoping he's at least 17 or 18. At least they let him use powers. The first time I think we saw him use his power signature. I don't think he did it in the first 2 or 3 episodes, did he?
He did it in the first episode, like briefly. I feel like, because I feel like it looked like more like a shadow than like over him. Like he was just in shadow, I think, if I recall correctly. But I do think he did use his powers. Now, do you think that we will get to see, aside from shape-shifting Morph, who turned into Ilyana, much to our delight last week, any more New Mutants?
Oh, I'm pretty sure. Cannonball did appear in the original series, so he does exist in the current X-Men verse. Warlock appeared.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Gotta go back and watch.
I know, like I do. Like I was gonna say, I can't even imagine how Warlock would look in animation, and it could not have been very good.
They were faithful to what I would have expected him to look like. So
that's crazy.
That's the season 5 opener. It's a 2-parter called The Phalanx Covenant. Shocker.
Oh no.
And they do, and Forge is in that, by the way. So that was Polaris is in it at the end, but she doesn't speak. And
which costume did she have, or which
the classic X Factor?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, what was I thinking? Okay, so I just Googled it, and I have to say, like, yeah, you're right. That's pretty much what you would expect. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, interesting. Anyway,
I thought where Forge and Storm were concerned in this episode, though, they kind of went really fast into him trying to restore her powers. To no
Yeah,
avail.
like, and it's so funny because your words echoed in my head, like, like she full on blamed him as she did in the comic book, and she was super pissed about it, and like her words were pretty. I liked. I have to say, like, I know you said something about it before, but that voice actress is just perfect for Storm. It is like so good. Um,
If you go back and watch the original series, the voice actress was originally Iona Morris. Don't know if you're familiar with her.
no, I'm not really familiar with
She
any of them.
is Philip Morris's sister, who was Martian Manhunter on Smallville.
Okay.
And he was on the Mission Impossible reboot in the 80s because his dad was on the original Mission Impossible. So she's in that Morris family. And again, a little bit more trivia. She was a California-based actress, and I think when they had switched almost towards the end of season 2 to all actors who lived in Canada, because that's where they did the recordings. And apparently, somebody told me they went back and redubbed a lot of her episodes from season 1 and the first part of season 2. Her last episode is called A Rogue's Tale, which deals with Rogue and the Miss Marvel thing. It's a great episode. You'd love it.
Oh my gosh.
And then Alison Seeley-Smith, who has that very Shakespearean tone when she speaks, and she's got a nice, rich voice. She took over in Mojo Vision, the first long shot episode of the series, and that was like the third to last episode of season 2. Yes, season 2. But then they went back and they dubbed most of Iona Morris's episodes from 1 and 2 with Alison Seeley-Smith. And I didn't know if it was, at first I just thought, well, when people go back and rewatch it, they probably want to familiarize you more with this actress. But apparently it was also a way, allegedly, to get out of paying royalties, because California actors get royalties on animation voiceovers, where in Canada they didn't have to pay them in reruns.
I mean, I believe it. They always do everything. I know, to save money and screw over the actor. I mean, that's what the whole strike was about, I guess, right?
And then Iona Morris reprises her role of Storm in the last few episodes of Spider-Man the Animated Series when they do the Secret Wars, because that was filmed in California or recorded in California. She was there, and bing, bang, boom.
And that's one to grow on. I'm just kidding.
And I looked up some old letters pages for you because I remembered, and it just hit me. There was supposed to be a Storm and Forge miniseries in the 80s. If you look at Uncanny 196, it's in that letters page 2, and that's 2 issues before Life, Death 2. They said in the upcoming, and it was supposed to be drawn by Barry Windsor-Smith, so you would have loved it. Written by Chris, the Michelangelo of comic writers. And that was supposed to come out, I guess, in the next year or so. But remember, we also had that Rachel as Phoenix miniseries that never happened that Leonardi was supposed to do. To tell us what happened to her between Mutant Massacre and Excalibur.
Which I discovered something today that I don't know if I remember this or not, but I guess it was after that, and it did come out. What is the 3-issue miniseries X-Men True Friends with Kitty Pryde, Rachel Summers, and it's drawn by Leonardi. It's written by Claremont.
I think, doesn't that take place? Is that like another time travel thing? I think.
Yeah, it must be, because I feel like it was related to Excalibur in some way.
Yes, I think it's a time travel thing.
Okay.
It came out in the late 90s. I remember skimming it, but it wasn't something I went back and reread over and over again. But
it's completely unrelated to the, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I do have a vague recollection of there's supposed to be a Storm and Forge limited series, which I guess would have been like basically what, Life Death Part 3, or was it supposed to take place before Life Death Part 2 actually happened?
It was definitely supposed to take place after Life Death Part 2, because they announced it 2 issues before Life Death Part 2. So Life Death Part 2 was in the can.
Oh, okay.
I think what ended up happening is whatever story options or ideas they had for it, a lot of them were incorporated into Storm and Forge's Fall of the Mutants issues.
Oh, okay, yeah, because they had a great storyline in Fall of the Mutants. I mean, that was very satisfying for me, and which of course led to the return of her powers. Now, how crazy would it be they can't incorporate? I mean, God knows they were able to do so much with Inferno in such a short little time. Do you think we could possibly have the Fall of the Mutants incorporated into
If
the
they had
return?
crossovers and stuff, yes. But we don't have. They do have X Factor around. This is part of my Marvel Masterworks that I'm going to reread later because
Gorgeous. You just got that correct?
No, this is actually an older one. It's volume, I think, 12, 10,
Uh-huh.
where they're like up to volume 16, which
Wow.
just finished Inferno off. So they're one episode shy of Jubilee's introduction.
Yeah, well, knowing that, like in a way, it is perfect marketing, but in another way, it is kind of a good coincidence that it came out at this time, right?
Oh, absolutely. I just like you. I wish they would, do something. I mean, they can't cram it in as much. They did a good job with Inferno, but Fall of the Mutants, the X-Men issues are pretty much the only Fall of the Mutants issues that I was really invested in at the time. I mean, I know Archangel was created at that time and he became a fan favorite. And X Factor actually had a more likable storyline as a whole, not the adversary thing with the X-Men. I was just drawn into, and Storm got her powers back. But X Factor, it was a turning point because at the end of that, X Factor was regarded as heroes to the public, and people started liking mutants at that point, which was, just very touching because, before that, it was always like, over time, the slurs, the this, all the stuff that Claremont had been building up for years, about, originally they were just seemed as, some people just said maybe they were freaks or some people might have been impressed, but as time went by, the hatred and the animosity towards mutants grew and grew, and then this was the first time you really see the public. There's this like really great scene that both of the Simonsons did together because I guess Louise wrote Fall of the Mutants in and Walt drew it, and this little girl is giving Jean flowers, and she says, "I just want you to know, my mommy said it'd be okay if I grew up to be a mutant like you."
Oh,
That was just
progress.
So that was a great. I said it was a great story for there. The X-Men issues because Storm got her powers back, and even Dazzler has some cool moments when she had that mask bonded to her face by Spiral.
Yes, that was amazing with the knife coming out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that was so cool.
And Madeline was like, "I don't care if I'm still with you to the end or whatever," and she was powerless, or so she thought. Everybody was just so invested at that time, So it was and Silvestri art. I mean, he was really. I mean, he wasn't at his Inferno level yet, but he was just, just getting. It was like
Silvestri is just one of those really great artists. Like he just has such like a beautiful flow and to his style. As a matter of fact, like because I am the art whore that I am, I had to get the Batman and Joker miniseries that it was a 7-part series written and drawn by Silvestri. And I actually liked it, and I just had to get it because of his art. But yeah, it's interesting to see how much he grew as an artist on the X-Men. He really did come into his own on that, for sure.
Yep.
And I think I look back, like at the time, I didn't know that Dan Green was the best anchor for him, but looking back on it, I feel like he was an amazing anchor for him, and they actually had a lot of great, beautiful art together.
And Dan Green inked way longer than I thought he did.
I know he's been around forever and a day, and well, I don't know that I don't even know if he's still alive. Did he just recently pass? I feel like he did. Actually, he did.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think he passed not too long ago, and yeah, I think it was. I mean, I had discovered a little bit, like especially during my show and stuff. Yeah, he had several like he inked Byrne a lot. Yeah, I feel like he inked Perez, like old Avengers and X-Men and stuff like that. And of course, I loved his inks on John Romita Jr.'s X-Men run. I felt like they had a lot of great moments. One of the
but the first run for some reason just had more depth to me. It was, like John Romita Jr.'s Rachel. Oh my God. Just amazing. If I had to pick the two characters that he did the best, okay, 3. His Storm is beautiful. His Rachel is impactful or emotional. And he drew a amazing Colossus.
He really did. I actually loved his Colossus. You know, I'm such a like staunch I don't know why I hate change as when it comes to some of my signature characters. Like, you know, we talked about Dave Cockrum's design and he just costume design, and he designed a lot of the looks of the new X-Men, and his Storm's costume was perfect. I never felt anyone should ever change it. The one exception is Paul Smith, another one of our favorite X artists, who took the jewel from her chest, which, you know, it was more like a cape that went over her shoulders, and he turned it into a clasp, like at her collar, which I loved, and I thought it was great. So little changes like that. But when did Colossus? He had a drastic costume change. You'll know. Was it during Fall of the Mutants, where he had like sort of like um the white bands around the legs, and it had like the collar went across like this. You know, he no longer had like the wing collars,
He
but he
went
had
back
more
to
like
the
a
original, actually, before in Mutant Massacre, because he said all his new ones. Because I guess, you know, Ramita Jr. liked drawing new costumes because he did it for Rogue, he did it for Colossus. Colossus had multiple versions from when they first run up with Selene. And remember, Rogue saves him in that penthouse. She's like, "No use ruining your pretty little costume on its first night out." And that was when he changed to the one right after Secret Wars. And then there were variants of that. He had a really cool one in Asgard that Art Adams drew. I know you loved it. And then he went back to his original outfit right at the beginning of the Mutant Massacre. Then he was in a coma for a year. Not in a coma, he was paralyzed.
I hated that so much. Oh,
and then
God, I hated
during,
that.
it seems like all they did really was they gave him that big belt buckle and they kept him shirtless in his steel form. He didn't have, he was not covered. He was like a steel submariner after that. And you know, it looked good because I guess maybe visually they got to show off more of the steel physique, and maybe that played well to the audience. But the one question I wanted to ask you, being the, you know, that you have the artist's eye and talent, which I do not have. I can look at stuff, I can't draw it. Is when Romita Jr. came back in the early 90s, circa 300, and Dan Green was his inker, to me, the art was drastically different. And I didn't know if that was just a sign of the times, you know, how things were bigger, things were maybe more exaggerated, or, you know, where maybe out in your face art in some cases may have been considered more, you know, where I thought with Claremont, it was the art and the story were character driven. But, and I'm not just talking about Romita Jr. because, you know, I love his work, but I just thought in the early 90s, a lot of stuff was just so flashy and didn't have as much depth, which is why I preferred Silvestri to other artists that people would argue that they think have more cleaner lines, but he has depth.
I have some art answers for you. One huge thing is that Romita Jr.'s art changed drastically in its style itself. If I recall correctly, he was very polarizing when he came to the new X-Men film, or to the X-Men following Paul Smith, and faced a lot of criticism. A lot of people said that his characters looked like blocky and fat, I think. And
I did not feel that at all. I was very compelled by them.
I thought they looked like very like realistic, you know what I mean? So I think, but this in his brain like caused him to like thin out his characters, you know, like his Spider-Man definitely is much thinner than it used to be. Then we also have I don't know, like if you look at John Byrne over years, like his face has just changed somehow depending on what era he was in.
Or who was his anchor.
Or who was his anchor. That's a huge part of it. I'm sure Dan Green changed somewhat as an anchor. But then you also have the computer coloring happening now, which was not happening during his first X-Men run. And I think like he's one of those classic comic book artists who kind of looks better with more of a flat coloring. I think it's like I just can see like a lot of his Spider-Man. I want to say it was like colored by Dan Kemp or something, and it was just like so overdone and just like it looks pretty in a way, but I think someone like more old school kind of penciler like Ramita Jr. is like giving us all the texture and the shadows and the hair and the, you know, folding in the clothes that we need. And you don't need like an overly rendered like computer style. So I think that that changes the aesthetic of it as well. I don't know, you know, but yeah, it's just weird. Like with anything, an artist is going to evolve. I mean, several decades. Like,
Hmm.
was it like 20 years between his runs or
It was
not
like a hundred.
quite?
It was like 100 issues, so maybe like 8 years, 8 or 9 years,
Oh, okay. So not
maybe
quite,
less.
but still, that's
X-Men became bi-weekly in the summer times for a few years. But his remember his Dazzler run was way too short. Those first 3 issues are stunning.
yeah. He just came off of a lengthy run. I don't know if I think he's not on it anymore, but he relaunched, you know, because they're relaunching books left and right anymore. But
Everything
to
started
his
on again after 2 years, you know.
yeah, he just did like a 2 year stint on like a new Spider-Man title, and the story was off the rails. Like I couldn't get into the story at all, but I really enjoyed his art, and I thought, you know, I feel like he's firing on all cylinders, and his art is looking really good. So you'll be happy to know that. I would love to see him come to the X-Men, you know, as part of like this, you know, X fever that's happening. You know, they're launching a lot of new books. It would be great to see him do at least a one shot or something. It'd be great to see him and Claremont work together again. It would be great to see Art Adams and Claremont work together on like some special project. You know, they haven't mentioned Claremont yet. And I feel like he must be doing something because we got, you know, his uh Gambit and Storm miniseries, which I enjoyed a lot. And then he did like his Extreme X-Men. Actually, I enjoyed that too. You were a fan of Extreme X-Men, the first series, or
I
were you?
loved I loved the ending, especially when he like retconned the magma retcon.
Oh yeah, I think we talked about that last week, where somebody came along and changed her origin, and he was like, "Heck no," and changed it back.
Yep. I'm like,
I
you
love
go,
that.
boy. I was like, yes, Chris is king. Just like he said on I send you a screenshot where somebody was posting about the battle between Scott and Madeline in the Danger Room, and they said, well, it's discovered later that she was influencing him, and Storm didn't really win. And he said, in a word, crap.
Bullshit.
Like, I'm trying to clean it up, and I was just like, I had to like that comment. I could not like that comment enough because you know his intention always was Scott goes off and lives happily ever after with Madeline, and Storm is the final true leader of the X-Men at that time.
Yeah, but you know, like the fact that Storm won, you know, was like just a testament to her worthiness of being a leader. You know what I mean? Like it was all about her character, powerless or not. And
But
that's such a horrible thing to say.
but it was a tragic thing for Nightcrawler because he was acting team leader in that actual issue. They make reference because Storm was off in Africa and in Asgard. Scott was a reserve member, so Nightcrawler was the active team leader at that time. And they even say when they're playing with the baby or something, or and Nightcrawler's being his jesty little self, and they said he needs to show a better example. He's team leader. Yet halfway through this issue, Storm says, "Okay, a decision has to be made. One of us has to lead the X-Men." Like, okay, did you guys have a talk with Nightcrawler off panel saying, "Okay, you can't hack it, Fuzzy Elf. Bye."
That is so funny. That never occurred to me. And now, like, I'm talking to you about all this is like, I feel like I have to, and we might have to start like a sister show, rereading Claremont, like, because I need to, like, the nuance of that is like kind of crazy in a way. Like, yeah, like what a huge middle finger to Nightcrawler. Like,
Not
yeah,
fair at all.
he would have been a worthy leader at the time, and he still had his powers. But you know, I mean, Storm plunged a dagger into Callisto's heart without batting an eye. She's kind of a savage. I mean,
That was such a defining moment too.
I'm telling you, like we could almost start like another podcast just talking about Storm. I mean, Storm. Storm is just like, yeah, like I don't know, like I've never seen a writer be more in tune with a character ever in any form of fiction. you
And
know,
that was
that
the other thing I liked about the run is for a large portion of it after the death of Phoenix, if not when they got back from the Brood saga, which is when you and I both started reading within 2 issues of each other, Storm was the star of the book, basically, more so than Wolverine was. And I loved it because, when she got to be the focus, I was then that was the time that you and I both came in, basically. She was coming to run as leader. She had, met Yukio and became more wild. She came to grips with the fact that, remember when her powers were out of control and she thought that, she was just losing control, but it was really she had not reached harmony within herself because she was having all those issues with who she was and what she was going to be. Could she be Storm? Could she stay Aurora? And once noticed after she got the controversial haircut, but the kick-ass look, her powers were functioning just fine after they got back from Japan because she had reached an inner harmony with herself and she came to grips with who she had become.
I know the nuances of that is just like so crazy. I mean, just given the nature of her powers, her role as a goddess. But I mean, like I said, I could just talk about Storm forever.
And why
So,
didn't they ever go down for sorcery path at that point?
that's what I mean, you're buds with Claremont. I've seen pictures of you guys together, and
I'm sure he remembers me with the thousands of people he meets yearly.
I know, but I would like to believe, okay, so we need to plant the seed though of him, like this is what he needs to do. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, other things are fun and like, but I feel like he's, like visited other areas before in ways that he hasn't done the sorceress route, and he owes us that. He doesn't owe us shit, but I mean, he owes us that.
Maybe this adversary storyline in the cartoon is going to touch on that.
I mean, don't you want to see that? Oh my
Yeah,
God, I want to see that so bad.
especially, if it meant that we would actually get real Ileana, since Storm was linked to Ileana in Limbo.
I lost my mind when the Storm and Ileana miniseries came out. I was like, what? Oh my God, like this is talk about, yeah, like Storm was definitely the star of the X-Men at that point. And thank God for us, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if it would have been as compelling to us if she hadn't been. Like she definitely had me hook, line, and sinker for sure.
Yep, that was like 1 year into my collection of X-Men. So I was not like brand new, but I hadn't been reading X-Men religiously for long, just under a year.
Yeah. Um, I know. I just like I see those covers of Storm and Ileana in my mind, and I just now another thing that I definitely want to reread.
It would and it would be cool if they could incorporate that on the show. But like you said last week, I think a lot of these teasers we're getting is just to give us, those fan moments that they don't have time to cram into a 10-episode season.
Well, the good news is not only are they working on season 2, but they are also working on season 3 concurrently. So we have at least 2 more seasons of this exciting show, not to mention this exciting podcast to look forward to. And I can't imagine, like, so hopefully like the new showrunner is a fan of our podcast and they pick up some of these ideas that they could touch. I mean, there's a unlimited amount of storylines that they could do that would satisfy me.
I'm looking up the title of next week's episode so we can, take a guess on what it could be about.
And yes, and I was going to say, if there was anything we should talk about before we wrap this up, and that would definitely be it right there, because I'm curious. I feel like I looked up all the titles and nothing really, nothing stuck with me but I think I was just looking to see when the next Life Death was.
Life Death 2 is in 2 weeks.
So what is next week?
Remember It.
Remember It.
No idea what that means.
That I was going to say that couldn't possibly, like, that doesn't tip me off in any way, shape, or form.
Unless they're trying to find out what original recipe Jean remembers when she could have been swapped, and if they're going to, because notice how she and Scott were oddly absent. They went off to Washington, D.C. in this episode together. When, like, don't they have marital issues they have to work out? Like, are you married?
it was very much like a weekly drama or like a soap opera where like your character just wasn't on that episode. You like one of your favorite characters. Yeah. So, you know,
They
the
are.
X-Men has a big cast, and I mean, we have got a lot of Jean and Scott so far, so maybe they needed to give us a little break.
That was another comment though that people had made about last week, and I totally agree because my nephew and I were talking about it. Both my eldest nephews both watch the show and they text me on it every week. I don't know if my youngest nephew, who's like 28, watches it, but he might. But the thing was, call me Madeline Pryor, and it's like, where did that come from? I mean, we know where it came from, but it would have been nice if they had established when she picked this name out of a hat. I mean, we get the Pryor because prior existence is Jean. Fine, get it. But if they could have like thrown in a 5 seconds of dialogue saying that she named herself Madeline after the little girl that got hit by the car when they first activated their telepathic powers, just something.
Right. That, you know, yeah, I know. A wasted, I know they put such thought into other things, and then other things are such a throwaway, but
I mean, I know
you
the
know,
character name was Annie Richardson, I think, in the comics, but they could have made it Madeline for this because
artistic license, yeah.
exactly.
That actually that would have been great. Actually, where like you need to be like in direct contact with these people because that's like a great idea right there.
Well,
I mean,
thank you. Well,
it almost writes itself. I mean, it's genius.
It's right there. The proof is in the pudding.
Amen to that. Well, I think that's a good note to end on, because you know, I think that we got a lot of mileage out of that rather lackluster episode. So
Yes. So many different angles we took on this one. So.
I for sure. I know we're all over the place. And I didn't even tell you about the quasi life death part 3 that you may or may not be aware of, that Barry Windsor-Smith did. And I think I'll save that for next week. How's that for a teaser?
Oh, nice. Yes, definitely. Well, save it for 2 weeks when they do Life Death 2.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it'd be more appropriate for that. All right. Well, and you know, the comic book actually comes out next week too, issue 2, filling in the gaps, which I did wind up picking up. I did a flip through of it in case anyone's interested. It's doing quite well ratings wise, but the comic book is actually pretty good. You know, like I said, we have like they do Storm's haircut off panel, and I felt cheated by that. But other than that, I don't know. It's actually pretty good. The art's fun, and the story is fun. So it's a good, you know, as I have, it's hard to wait. I feel like, you know, the X-Men fever is here, so I want as much X-Men 97 related stuff as I can get. And I think maybe I should cave in and watch the actual first series.
And I have a suggestion on before we wrap it up. When you watch the first series, we could do one podcast after you finish a season.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, right. Like after or one podcast after I finish the whole season. Oh, okay.
Not per episode, because that would be a lot.
That would be a lot. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's do that for sure.
One, we do previously on X-Men. Oh, and by the way, I thought, you know, an amalgamation of our names, if we're going to go there, should be, when we refer to ourselves, Fitz-Gerso.
Fitz-Gerso. Okay, I'm down.
You get to be first because it's your podcast.
Fitz-Gerso. And it just rolls right off the tongue, so why not?
Yeah, I mean, Roy does not really work. Or Soy? No, sorry.
Soy, yeah, no, probably not.
Soy. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, because, okay, so after I finish the first season, because you know I'm going to have questions.
Yep, and just be careful because if you're watching it on Disney, I think they actually air that one episode out of order. They put episode 8 after episode 10. So just be careful after you watch Slave Island, which is episode 7. Skip past 9 and 10, which is, I think, The Cure and Come the Apocalypse, and goes to the Unstoppable Juggernaut, and then go to 9 and 10 and finish off the season.
Okay, well, I'll consult you if I have any questions about the order of the episodes. Oh, and actually, I feel like I don't think we talked about it. And this is actually the one last thing I do want to end on is because I meant to ask you last week, and I think I forgot. Because it was mentioned that they fixed a problem in the opening credits. Did we talk about this? What was the problem? from the first time around?
Well,
Was there some sort of glitch or something?
it looks like when you have them attacking each other, coming at all sides.
Mm-hmm.
On Magneto's side, you have Thunderbird / Warpath, who was not an adversary, and this other green and pink, like brainchild looking thing. We don't even know who that is, who never appears on the show, except maybe as an extra background cameo character on Genosha. And they're like, why is this person in every freaking opening credit? You know, it's like they just, you know, now I think they've put Deathstrike and Emma Frost on the Magneto side, which kind of doesn't make any sense right now that there is a Magneto side because he's an X-Men.
Right. Oh boy. Well, you know, what are you gonna do?
But it looks good. The animation is solid.
All right. All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up for this week. I'm looking forward to next week. Remember it, whatever the heck that means. Such a quasi, like, bizarre tease, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, all right. We have that to look forward to. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed our little recap and trip down memory lane here. We will be back next week for episode 5 already of but did you notice the glimpse of Warpath at Mojo World?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, just like so briefly, like you just see him from like the neck down or something. Anyway, rewatch it. Yeah. All right, you guys. Thanks for coming back for more punishment, Philip, and Jorso, or whatever the hell our name is. We will be back. Jerso. We will be back next week to recap episode 5, remember it, of X-Men 97. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit that like button, and we'll be back next week. Thanks.